What I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about the floods in Texas and what's coming next to America in 2025. My name is Kristin Bryant, and I'm a 54-year-old elementary school teacher from Corpus Christi, Texas. 3 weeks ago, I was clinically dead for 18 minutes, and what Jesus showed me during those 18 minutes about the Texas floods and what's coming next to America will shock you to your core. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I was driving home from a parent-teacher conference on Highway 37 when a massive 18-wheeler ran a red light and slammed into my Honda Civic. The impact was so severe that my car flipped 3 times before landing in a ditch. I remember the sound of metal crushing, glass shattering, and then, nothing. The paramedics told my family later that I had massive internal bleeding and my heart stopped beating for 18 minutes. The moment my heart stopped, I felt myself being pulled upward. Not physically, but spiritually. I was suddenly standing above my crushed car, watching the paramedics work frantically on my lifeless body. I could see my husband racing to the hospital, crying and praying. I could see my children at home with my mother, not knowing yet what had happened. And I felt this overwhelming peace that I can't even describe to you. Then I saw him. Jesus appeared beside me, not as the pale European-looking Jesus from church paintings, but as a Middle Eastern man with kind, penetrating eyes that seemed to see right through to my soul. He was wearing a simple white robe, and there was this light emanating from him that wasn't harsh or blinding, but warm and comforting, like being wrapped in the perfect embrace. "Kristin," he said, "I have brought you here because there is something you must see, something you must tell my people." I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions, but somehow I knew this wasn't the time. He reached out his hand, and when I took it, we were suddenly transported to a place that wasn't quite heaven, but wasn't earth either. It was like being in a room where all of existence could be viewed like watching a movie screen, except everything was real, happening right now. "Look," Jesus said, and he gestured toward what appeared to be a massive map of Texas floating in the air before us. But this wasn't any ordinary map. This map was alive, pulsing with energy, and I could see the spiritual condition of every city, every town, every county across the state. What I saw made my heart break. There were these dark, jagged cracks running through the map like wounds in the earth. These cracks were spreading, growing darker and deeper, and I could feel the evil emanating from them. "Lord, what are these cracks?" Jesus looked at me and said, "These are the sins of the people, Kristin. Each crack represents where my children have turned away from me, where they have chosen darkness over light, where they have ignored my warnings and my love." He pointed to a particularly dark crack running through Houston. This crack represents the innocent blood that has been shed, not just through violence, but through the neglect of the vulnerable, the abuse of power, the indifference to suffering. Every time someone with power chooses profit over people, every time someone turns away from a neighbor in need, every time someone values material things over human life, this crack grows deeper. Then he showed me another crack, this one a sickly green color winding through Dallas and Fort Worth. This crack represents deception and lies. Politicians who promise hope but deliver despair. Business leaders who steal from their workers. People who break their vows and betray their families. Every lie told, every promise broken, every act of betrayal feeds this crack. I watched as he pointed to a gray, ashen crack spreading across rural Texas. This crack represents apathy and indifference. People who have grown cold to the suffering of others, who have stopped caring about their neighbors, who have become so focused on their own comfort that they cannot see the pain around them. This is perhaps the most dangerous crack of all, because it numbs the heart to my voice. But the worst crack, the one that made me weep, was a crack that seemed to shift and change colors constantly. It was everywhere, in every city, every town, every community. This crack, Jesus said, represents the normalization of sin. My people have become so accustomed to darkness that they no longer recognize it as darkness. They call evil good and good evil, just as Isaiah warned in chapter 5, verse 20. As I watched, I could see how these cracks were connected, how they fed off each other, how they created a network of spiritual darkness across the state. And from these cracks, I could see something rising, a dark, poisonous mist that was spreading across the land like a plague. "What is that mist, Lord?" "That," Jesus said, "is the spiritual consequence of sin. When my people turn away from me, when they choose darkness over light, they create a barrier between themselves and my protection. This mist represents the judgment that comes not from my anger, but from the natural consequences of rejecting my ways." Then Jesus showed me something that made my blood run cold. He waved his hand, and suddenly I was looking at recent footage of the devastating floods that had hit Texas. But I wasn't seeing it from the news perspective, I was seeing it from God's perspective. Kristin, these floods were not random acts of nature. They were the earth itself crying out because of the weight of sin upon it. Romans 8 verse 22 tells us that all creation groans and labors with birth pangs. The land itself is responding to the spiritual condition of the people who live upon it. I watched as Jesus showed me the spiritual reality behind the physical floods. Every area that had been hit hardest by the flooding corresponded exactly to the darkest cracks I had seen on the spiritual map. The floods weren't punishment, they were the inevitable result of spiritual darkness manifesting in the physical realm. "But Lord," I said, "innocent people died in those floods. Children, elderly people, people who loved you." Jesus turned to me and said, "Kristin, this is what I must show you next. Come." Suddenly we were in a different place, a grey, misty realm that felt neither hot nor cold, neither bright nor dark. It was like being in a waiting room that stretched on forever. And in this place I saw them, hundreds, maybe thousands of souls wandering aimlessly, not quite solid, not quite transparent. "These are the souls of those who died in the floods," Jesus explained. "But they are not lost because of the floods themselves. They are lost because those who remain on earth have stopped praying for them, have stopped seeking truth, have stopped calling upon my name with genuine faith." I watched these souls, and my heart broke for them. They weren't in hell, this wasn't a place of torment. But they weren't in heaven either. They were trapped in a place between, unable to move forward because the spiritual darkness on earth had created a barrier that even death couldn't break. "Lord, how is this possible?" "When my people turn away from me," Jesus explained, "when they stop seeking truth, when they stop praying with genuine faith, they create a spiritual darkness that affects not just the living, but the dead as well. These souls are trapped not by my judgment, but by the spiritual condition of those they left behind." I saw souls who had died in the floods, reaching out toward a light they could see but couldn't reach. And I understood that the light they were reaching for was the prayers, the faith, the spiritual seeking of those still alive on earth. "What can be done?" "This is why I have brought you here," Jesus said. "These souls can be freed, but only through genuine repentance, real faith, and fervent prayer from those still living. Every time someone truly turns to me, every time someone prays with genuine faith, every time someone chooses light over darkness, it creates a pathway for these souls to reach the light." Then Jesus showed me something even more disturbing. He showed me what was happening in America right now, today, as these lost souls remained trapped. "Look," he said, and suddenly I could see into the hearts and minds of people across America. I saw people in cities and towns, in homes and offices, in schools and even in churches, and what I saw made me sick to my stomach. I saw people who claimed to love God but whose hearts were far from Him. I saw people dancing, partying, living for pleasure while ignoring the cries of the suffering around them. I saw people so absorbed in their phones, their entertainment, their material pursuits that they couldn't hear the voice of God calling to them. "These are the ones who could pray for the lost souls," Jesus said sadly. "These are the ones who could seek truth and break through the spiritual darkness. But they have chosen to drown themselves in distractions, to worship idols of comfort and pleasure, to ignore my warnings and my love." I watched as Jesus showed me a typical American family. The father was glued to his phone, scrolling through social media while his wife watched angry news programs that filled her heart with hatred and fear. Their teenage son was in his room playing violent video games, while their young daughter watched inappropriate content on her tablet that was slowly corrupting her innocent mind. "They are in the same house," Jesus said, "but they are more separated than if they lived on different continents. They have built walls of distraction between themselves and each other, and between themselves and me." I saw how this family, and millions like them, were being fed a steady diet of spiritual poison. They were being told that God was old-fashioned, that faith was for the weak, that they didn't need anyone but themselves. They were being taught to worship money, success, pleasure, and power instead of the Creator who loved them. But Lord, I said, surely they don't realize what they're doing? Jesus looked at me and said, some don't realize it, Kristin, but many do. They have heard my voice calling to them. They have felt my spirit nudging their hearts. They have seen the signs I have given them. But they have chosen to ignore these warnings because they love their sin more than they love me. He showed me people who had mocked his messengers, who had called his prophets crazy, who had ridiculed those who tried to warn them about the spiritual condition of their hearts. I saw pastors who had watered down the gospel to make it more palatable, who had stopped preaching about sin and repentance because it made people uncomfortable. They want my blessings, Jesus said, but they don't want my lordship. They want my protection, but they don't want my correction. They want my love, but they don't want my truth. Then Jesus showed me something that made my soul tremble. He showed me a vision of America, not as it is now, but as it will be in the very near future. This is what is coming, he said, and I saw it as clearly as if I were watching it happen in real time. I saw great fires sweeping across American cities, not just forest fires, but fires that seemed to consume the very foundations of society. I saw economic collapse that made the Great Depression look like a minor inconvenience. I saw people who had spent their lives accumulating wealth and possessions suddenly finding themselves with nothing, their bank accounts emptied, their investments worthless, their security gone. But Lord, I said, this seems so severe. Kristin, Jesus replied, I do not send these things to punish, but to awaken. My people have built their lives on sand, on money, on political power, on material success, on human wisdom. I must allow these false foundations to be shaken so that they will build their lives on the only foundation that cannot be moved, on me. He showed me cities where the power grids failed, where the internet went down, where all the technology that people had become dependent on suddenly stopped working. In the first days, there was panic and chaos. People didn't know how to function without their devices, without their constant connection to the digital world. But then something beautiful began to happen. I saw neighbors who hadn't spoken to each other in years beginning to help each other. I saw families rediscovering the art of conversation. I saw people looking up at the stars for the first time in decades, remembering the wonder of creation. In the silence, Jesus said, they will finally be able to hear my voice. In the hardship, they will finally remember their need for me. In the loss of their false securities, they will finally discover their true security in me. I watched as prayer groups formed in neighborhoods across America. I saw people who had been too busy for church suddenly desperate to connect with God. I saw teenagers who had been addicted to social media beginning to read the Bible. I saw hardened business executives falling to their knees in genuine repentance. This is why the shaking is coming, Jesus explained. Not to destroy, but to awaken. Not to punish, but to purify. Not to condemn, but to call my people back to me. Then he showed me something that filled me with both hope and urgency. He showed me the power of prayer, the reality of spiritual warfare, the truth about what happens when even one person truly seeks God. Look, he said, and suddenly I could see into the spiritual realm. I saw demons, dark, twisted beings that fed on human sin and suffering. They were everywhere, whispering lies into people's ears, tempting them toward darkness, creating confusion and chaos. But then I saw something that made these demons flee in terror. I saw the prayers of God's people rising up like arrows of light, striking these dark beings and driving them back. I saw how every sincere prayer, every act of faith, every moment of genuine worship created a barrier of protection around families, communities, and cities. No prayer is too small, Jesus said. No act of faith is insignificant. Every time one of my children calls upon my name with genuine faith, it creates a shockwave in the spiritual realm that drives back the darkness. He showed me a memory from my own childhood when I had prayed for my sick grandfather. I had been maybe 6 years old, kneeling beside my bed, asking Jesus to heal my grandpa. I had thought it was just a simple, childish prayer. But Jesus showed me what had actually happened in the spiritual realm. My prayer had risen up like a golden arrow, striking a demonic being that had been oppressing my grandfather. The demon had fled, and God's healing power had flowed into my grandfather's body. He had recovered completely, and I had never known that my simple prayer had played a part in his healing. "This is the power I have given to my people," Jesus said. "But they have forgotten who they are. They have forgotten their authority. They have forgotten that they are not victims of circumstances, but warriors in a spiritual battle." Then Jesus showed me something that made me understand the full scope of what was happening. He showed me that the floods in Texas were just the beginning. He showed me a map of the entire United States, and I could see the same dark cracks that I had seen in Texas spreading across the entire nation. "This is not just about Texas," Jesus said. "This is about America. This is about my people who have been called by my name, who have been blessed beyond measure, but who have forgotten the source of their blessings." I saw the spiritual condition of America, and it was worse than I had imagined. The same sins that had created the cracks in Texas were present everywhere: the shedding of innocent blood, the deception and lies, the apathy and indifference, the normalization of sin. "America stands at a crossroads," Jesus said. "If my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land, just as I promised in 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14. But if they continue in their rebellion, if they continue to choose darkness over light, then the shaking that has begun will continue until the false foundations are completely destroyed." I saw that the choice was not up to the government, not up to the politicians, not up to the media or the entertainment industry. The choice was up to God's people, those who called themselves Christians, who attended church, who claimed to follow Jesus. "If my people will wake up," Jesus said, "if they will turn off their distractions and seek my face, if they will pray with genuine faith and live according to my word, then I will heal their land. But if they continue to sleep, if they continue to ignore my warnings, then the shaking will continue until they have no choice but to listen." Then Jesus showed me something that gave me hope even in the midst of this sobering vision. He showed me what would happen if God's people responded to his call. I saw churches filled with people who were genuinely seeking God, not just going through religious motions. I saw families where the parents turned off the television and the internet and began reading the Bible together, praying together, talking about spiritual things. I saw young people who had been lost in the darkness of modern culture, discovering the joy and peace that comes from knowing Jesus. "This is what I desire," Jesus said. "This is what I have always desired. Not religious activity, but genuine relationships. Not church attendance, but heart transformation. Not external conformity, but internal purity." I watched as these transformed lives began to impact their communities. I saw Christians who weren't just talking about love, but actually demonstrating it by caring for the poor, the sick, the lonely. I saw believers who weren't just condemning sin, but offering hope and healing to those trapped in sin. "When my people live as I have called them to live," Jesus said, "they become light in the darkness. They become salt that preserves and flavors the earth. They become the hope of the world." I saw how this spiritual awakening would break through the darkness that was trapping the lost souls. As more and more people turned to God in genuine faith, as more and more prayers rose up from pure hearts, the spiritual barriers began to crumble. I watched as the lost souls I had seen earlier, those trapped in that gray, misty realm, suddenly began to move toward the light. The prayers of the living were creating pathways for the dead to find their way home. "This is the power of genuine faith," Jesus said. "It not only transforms the one who believes, but it creates ripples that extend far beyond what human eyes can see." Then Jesus showed me something that made me understand why he had chosen to reveal all of this to me. He showed me that I was not the only one he was speaking to. Across America, he was raising up ordinary people, teachers, construction workers, nurses, farmers, store clerks, people who would never consider themselves prophets or evangelists, but who would carry his message to a lost and dying world. "I am not looking for the famous or the powerful," Jesus said. "I am looking for the faithful and the available. I am looking for those who will speak my truth even when it is unpopular, who will stand for my righteousness even when they stand alone, who will love my people even when they are rejected." I saw that there was a remnant, a group of believers who had not bowed the knee to the false gods of this age, who had not compromised their faith for the sake of acceptance or comfort. These were the ones God was using to sound the alarm, to call his people back to himself. "You are part of this remnant," Jesus said to me. "You have been chosen not because you are special, but because you are willing. You have been called not because you are perfect, but because you are available." I felt the weight of this calling, but I also felt his strength flowing through me. I knew that I could not do this in my own power, but I also knew that I would not have to. He would be with me every step of the way. Then Jesus began to show me specific things that were going to happen in the coming months and years. He showed me that the shaking would intensify, that the storms would increase, that the economic instability would worsen. But he also showed me that in the midst of all this chaos, there would be a great harvest of souls. People who have been resistant to the gospel will suddenly become hungry for truth, Jesus said. People who have mocked my name will cry out for mercy. People who have trusted in their own strength will finally acknowledge their need for a savior. I saw revival breaking out in the most unlikely places, in inner cities, in rural communities, in colleges and universities, in corporate boardrooms. I saw people from every background, every race, every socio-economic level coming to Jesus with genuine repentance and faith. "This is what I have been preparing for," Jesus said. "This is why I have allowed the shaking. Not to destroy, but to awaken. Not to condemn, but to call my people home." As our time together began to come to an end, Jesus looked at me with such love and compassion that I never wanted to leave his presence. "Kristin," he said, "you must go back now. You must tell them what you have seen. You must warn them of what is coming, but you must also give them hope." "But Lord," I said, "who will believe me? Who will listen to a simple school teacher from Corpus Christi?" "I will prepare the hearts of those who need to hear this message." Jesus said, "You just have to be faithful to speak what I have shown you. Don't worry about the results. That is my responsibility." He placed his hand on my forehead, and I felt a power flowing through me that I had never experienced before. "I am giving you my authority," he said. "When you speak these words, you are not speaking your own words, but mine. When you pray for the lost, you are not praying your own prayers, but mine. When you minister to the broken, you are not ministering in your own strength, but mine." Then he showed me one final vision, a vision of what America could become if his people responded to his call. I saw a nation where righteousness flowed like a river, where justice was established in the land, where the poor were cared for and the oppressed were set free. I saw churches that were not just social clubs, but houses of prayer where God's presence was so real that people came from far away just to experience it. "This is what I desire for America," Jesus said. "This is what I have always desired. A nation that acknowledges me as Lord, that seeks my ways, that loves my people. But it can only happen if my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways." With that, I felt myself being pulled back. I didn't want to leave his presence, didn't want to return to the world of pain and darkness and confusion. But I knew I had work to do. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air in the emergency room at Testimon Hospital. The doctors and nurses were amazed. They told my family that I had been clinically dead for 18 minutes, that my heart had stopped completely, that there had been no brain activity. By all medical standards, I should have been either dead or severely brain damaged. But here I was, not only alive but completely healed. The internal bleeding had stopped. The broken bones had mended. The traumatic brain injury they had diagnosed was gone. The doctors had no explanation for it. Since then, I have been sharing this message everywhere I can. The floods in Texas were just the beginning. The economic shaking that's coming will make 2008 look like a minor correction. The social upheaval that's ahead will test every foundation we thought was secure. But in the midst of all this chaos, God is preparing to do something glorious. He's preparing to pour out his Spirit on all flesh, just as Joel prophesied. He's preparing to reveal his glory to a world that has forgotten him. He's preparing to demonstrate his power to a generation that has trusted in their own strength. But it all depends on how his people respond. Will we humble ourselves and pray? Will we seek his face and turn from our wicked ways? Will we choose to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem? I'm sharing this testimony not to scare you, but to awaken you. Not to condemn you, but to call you to the most important decision you'll ever make. The time is short. The The harvest is ready. The laborers are few. The floods were just the beginning. The real question is, are you ready for what comes next?